In their first game of the 2022 LCS season, Cloud9 drafted a very different comp to what we usually see in professional play. I'm going to attempt to break down the draft and how they ended up with the comp they did. I see a lot of people in the community, including casters and analysts, gently pushing a narrative that LS premeditated this draft or wanted this specific comp to be played in their first game, which I don't believe to be the case. LS is a big advocate of draft theory and drafting on the fly rather than going into draft with a goal to end up with. By answering the moves your opponent makes in the draft phase, while your champions individually may end up weaker than the meta OP picks that teams tend to default to, your team on the whole will end up more coherent and more importantly more effective against the specific champions your opponent has picked. So let's jump into the draft. Noting that C9 are playing red side this game, they ban champions that they find hardest to answer. Caitlyn is an example of a champion who currently has no clear answer. Along with Lux or other lane dominant supports, she wins almost every bot lane matchup so hard that the enemy team is forced to do something about it, which can be really disruptive to whatever strategy they are trying to execute themselves. They also ban Thresh. I think this is to do with the Thresh Jinx or Thresh Aphelios dynamic. By picking Thresh first, you guarantee yourself one of these two lanes, since the enemy can only take away either Aphelios or Jinx. And finally, Zeri seems like a caution ban, as people haven't really figured out good answers to the champion yet. Also, when you have a new champion, if a team's willing to pick it, they probably have more experience playing around it or with it than people who aren't willing to pick it themselves, so it's a safe ban until knowledge of the champion catches up. Corki is another champion that currently doesn't seem to have a clear answer other than trying to match it with Victor. I could see C9 banning Corki if Golden Guardians hadn't already banned it themselves. Golden Guardians B1 Yuumi. In my opinion, B1 needs to be either ridiculously overpowered like Pantheon at Season 9 Worlds, or flexible. Yuumi is neither, and the inflexibility makes her really exploitable. She can only be played in the support role, and you know that it's going to be pretty easy to survive lane against whatever 2v2 Golden Guardians opt for. C9 answer with R1 Gwen, using her flexibility to keep their draft open. She has the ability to be played top, jungle, and mid at a push, but not really. She can function in side lane comps, teamfight comps, and disengage comps, so there's tons of directions that Cloud9 can go with their draft. For their R2 pick, they go for Aphelios. It's a pretty safe pick here, since you know he's going to have a decent lane with Yuumi already being showed, since hard counters like Syndra bot lane don't function particularly well with a Yuumi support. Like Gwen, he's also able to function in a variety of comps. Golden Guardians respond with a B2 Jhin. The bot lane 2v2 of Golden Guardians is now revealed, allowing C9 to choose what matchup they play in that lane. The Jhin pick gives C9 information on what direction Golden Guardians want to draft, as Jhin is generally used as a weak side AFK farm champion to enable playing through top, or used in pick comps alongside champions like Twisted Fate. The pick also shows an intent to pick a carry jungler for Yuumi to attach to, while Jhin sits alone in bot lane catching waves. They then B3 Victor. I really hate this move as it's almost definitely not a top lane flex pick. Since Cloud9 are on red side, this allows them to choose their mid matchup on R4 and then also choose their top matchup on R5 by flexing Gwen to jungle. After already choosing their bot matchup, Cloud9 are completely dictating this draft other than the blind Gwen jungle. C9 respond with an R3 Sona. Jhin Yuumi alone can't really move Aphelios Sona in lane, and without a champion like Leona or Nautilus it can be pretty difficult to set up a tower dive. This lets Sona make it through lane phase and get her Moonstone Renewer, which is normally really impractical as she's pretty bad in lane and very squishy, but at which point she becomes one of the most powerful champions in the game. It has slight flex potential towards mid lane, but with how well bot lane is set up for a Sona pick I think that's pretty irrelevant. Sona also nullifies a lot of Victor's chip damage when he's looking for poke with his E. It becomes pretty irrelevant as it gets immediately healed back up, and after Moonstone Renewer is finished, she has the ability to heal her team through Chaos Storm's damage while they retreat. For the second round of bans, Golden Guardians bans Xin Zhao and Lee Sin. The Xin ban here makes a lot of sense if Gwen was going to be top lane. His ult makes it really hard to get on top of the Sona and Aphelios. Lee Sin makes less sense, but we can see that Golden Guardians are targeting jungle with their bans, effectively wasting them, since Cloud9 choose to flex the Gwen into the jungle. Cloud9 are winning draft by not revealing what direction they're going until they absolutely have to, which makes decisions much harder for Golden Guardians. Cloud9 on the other hand ban Jarvan and Zed. I like both of these bans. The Jarvan ban prevents an unescapable Jarvan-Yuumi combo, since Cloud9's bot lane have no way to escape Jarvan ultimate. At this point they also have the intention of picking Ivern on R4, who also cannot escape Jarvan ult. The Zed ban is a targeted ban at Pridestalker. It's one of his best carry jungle picks, and the Yuumi Jhin suggests it's the kind of thing he'd want to pick this game. Cloud9 pick Ivern on R4. This makes Golden Guardians think that Gwen is top lane and Ivern is jungle, keeping their draft flexible even after 4 out of 5 of their picks. But as we know, the Ivern ends up being played mid lane. I think it can only be picked here because of the blunder Golden Guardians made earlier in the draft by revealing their mid lane pick. Ivern is fine into Viktor mid, as Viktor doesn't have the lane pressure to prevent Ivern reaching Moonstone Renewer safely. Moonstone is cheaper than any of the mage mythic items, so as long as Ivern isn't behind by more than 600 gold or so, he comes online at the same time as Viktor, while being much more impactful in 5v5s. Cloud9's comp now says, we're going to go to an objective, and you either try to kill the invincible Aphelios, or we just get it. Since Jhin and Viktor don't really help with killing the Aphelios, C9 are in a really good spot to have Berserker be completely unkillable and carry the game. Golden Guardians go for Qiyana as their B4 pick. This is my favourite part of their draft. It has great carry potential with a Yuumi attached to her and can apply Serpent's Fang to the whole team while outputting huge damage and hard CC, preventing the enchanters from healing. It's a really good answer to what C9 have shown, and it's the shining light in an otherwise dismal draft from the side of Golden Guardians. They then go with B5 Renekton. I can understand the thought process, but it seems very narrow-minded. It seems as if Golden Guardians thought, well, Renekton breaks shields, and they have shields. And that was the end of the discussion. The Renekton pick puts them on a clock. They have to get ahead before 15 minutes, or they just lose to Cloud9 scaling. He's also blind picking, and as such, probably won't be able to dominate lane in the way people like to imagine Renekton doing. Finally, Cloud9 R5 Gnar. This is my least favourite part of their draft, but they're so far ahead in draft already that it doesn't really matter. Gnar is a good answer to Renekton in a vacuum, which Summit can use to draw some pressure from Qiyana, which in turn slows down Golden Guardian's main win condition. As well as winning the matchup, Gnar is also outscaling Renekton in both side lane and team fights. There are picks I would have preferred, like Gragas or Poppytop, which is criminally underplayed. Essentially, I think a pick that messes with Qiyana's engage would be the best option for C9, since realistically, it's GG's only way to win. I'm really impressed by the draft LS and C9 showed in their first game. They demonstrated flexible drafting and responding to what the opponent is doing within the draft rather than sticking to a plan they had coming in. It's easy to look at the game and say that Enchanters plus Aphelios is insane, because it is, but only if the enemy doesn't have a good answer to it. Cloud9 didn't commit to this style until their R4 pick. They still had so many ways they could take their draft to end up with a completely different comp. I think this style of drafting is underused because it's really hard to be able to analyse the enemy comp and come up with the correct answer while not locking yourself into a particular playstyle all within 30 seconds. But it's a skill I think people should start honing because it can make games look really free. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my analysis. I'm nowhere near as knowledgeable on draft theory as a lot of people, but it's something that interests me and I want to get better at, so I'm really looking forward to more drafts from C9 in the future, and maybe I'll make some more videos on it. See ya!